Your presence here now in the hours following the total solar eclipse of August 12th is not accidental. It is not the algorithm. It is not a distraction. Over the last 3 days, you have felt a restlessness you couldn't name, a fatigue that didn't come from the body, repetitive thoughts that returned without permission, and a strange sensation that something invisible was approaching behind everything you did. You attributed it to stress, the weather, routine, lack of sleep. It was none of those things. It was the field preparing itself. And now that the shadow has passed, there is a window of approximately 72 hours in which everything you do, or fail to do, will define whether this passage turns into a real breakthrough or just another date that passed and left nothing behind but a photo on your phone. What I am going to tell you in the next few minutes are the 8 things you need to avoid after the eclipse, and each of them was written for a minority. Because the sleeping majority will feel this energy and blame it all on tiredness, the weather, a hard day at work, and the window will close for those people before they even realize it existed. You belong to the minority that has the internal infrastructure to cross this passage in a conscious manner. Pay attention, because every topic here is a coordinate, and missing one of them costs much more than it seems. The first trap, and perhaps the most silent of all, is to start looking for signs immediately. As soon as the eclipse ends, there is an almost childish temptation to demand quick proof from the universe, a visible confirmation, a repeating number, a coincidence that screams, an unexpected message, some extraordinary event that validates what you have just experienced. And if that proof doesn't appear within a few hours, expectation begins to turn into doubt, doubt begins to turn into frustration, and frustration closes the field. The eclipse does not function as an astronomical event that produces immediate consequences in your material life. It works like a stone thrown into a very deep lake. The stone disappears quickly, the ripples on the surface take time, and what really changes is at the bottom where you cannot see it yet. Looking for a sign too soon is like digging up the earth 2 days after planting a seed to check if it has turned into a tree. You kill the tree before it exists. Changes always begin from within, in silence, in small decisions you will make without noticing, in intuitions that will arrive without noise, and it is precisely this subtle quality that demands from you the opposite of anxiety. It demands presence. It demands the courage not to check. In the coming hours, if something important needs to reach you, it will reach you. And if it hasn't arrived yet, it's because it isn't time. The rush for a sign is the first saboteur of the conscious minority. The second trap usually appears in the mirror. After crossing the shadow, many people feel a sudden, almost impulsive urge to cut their hair drastically, completely change their look, get a symbolic tattoo, mark the body with something that physically translates this new identity that seems to be being born. And this urge is real. The impulse comes from a true place. However, there is an abysmal difference between transformation and reaction. Transformation is slow, it is decided with your entire being, and it still makes sense 3 weeks later. Reaction is an energetic discharge that needs to come out somewhere, and it chooses the body. Because the body is the closest and easiest thing to modify. If you act now, at maximum intensity, there is a high chance that a month from now, you will look in the mirror and not recognize the choice. Not because it was a wrong choice, but because it was a choice made by a version of you that hasn't finished appearing yet. Let the feeling of rupture stabilize. Feel the impulse, respect the impulse, but do not obey the impulse yet. If 2 weeks from now that same change is still calling to you with the same force, then it is yours. It belongs to the new version that is forming. Then you act, and the external change becomes a seal of what has already been consolidated within. Before that, it is just anxiety dressed as identity, and it is exactly here, at this turning point, where you begin to realize that real transformation requires method, rhythm, and structure, that I need to tell you why I prepared Magia M28 Exercicios, the 28 Keys to Awakening. A portal is not the astronomical event. A portal is the exact point where the cost of remaining stuck in your current life becomes greater than the terror of taking the next step. You take the step, and then the ground appears. Never before. And the problem for those who cross an eclipse without structure is precisely this. The energy arrives, the calling arrives, the clarity begins to arrive, and the person has nowhere to put all of it. It is a journey of 28 days, a complete lunar cycle, to recognize the signs of the soul, integrate the shadow that the eclipse has just illuminated, and transform this silent restlessness you have been feeling into language, into direction, into decision. It is not a course in spiritual theory, it is the infrastructure that holds what you experienced yesterday and transforms it into real movement. It is in the first pinned comment of this video. If you feel that this window reached you for a reason, comment the word Chavi below. This comment is your symbolic commitment to the version that is being born. And now we continue. The third trap is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all, because it goes against everything your anxiety will want to do in the coming hours. Do not immediately tell everyone the plans, decisions, and intentions that gained strength after the eclipse. Ideas born in this type of passage are still in formation. They are roots, not trees, and a root needs darkness, needs silence, needs protection. When you share too early, you introduce into your field the opinions of others, the doubts of others, the fears of others, the projections of others, and all of this enters precisely at the moment when your internal structure is still fragile. You are not being pedantic or distant by keeping it. You are protecting what does not yet have a shell. The impulse to tell exists because talking about a decision generates a premature sensation that it has already happened. And this sensation burns part of the energy that should be used to set the decision in motion. This is why so many people leave a spiritual event euphoric, tell everyone everything, and 3 days later do nothing. The energy was spent on speech. Silence, at this moment, is not a secret. Silence is fuel. That which needs to bloom in your life will bloom without an audience. Write it down if you must. Record it in a notebook. Talk to yourself out loud if it helps, but keep it from social media, keep it from the friend group, keep it from immediate family, keep it from anyone whose instantaneous reaction might knock you off your axis. There is a difference between sharing a victory and announcing an intention. Victory is told afterward. Intention is protected before. The fourth trap is the exact opposite of the third, but equally destructive. Do not turn the eclipse into an omen of fear. In the coming days, it is almost inevitable that some problem will arise, that some difficult emotion will appear, that some uncomfortable coincidence will find you, that someone will drift away, that some news will destabilize you. And the mind, which is a machine for finding patterns even where they don't exist, will immediately connect these events to the eclipse, as if the shadow had triggered a sequence of punishments. This is false. This is a childish reading of symbology. The shadow of the eclipse does not function as a punishment. It functions as a revelation. What appears after an event like this was almost always already unstable, hidden, or asking for attention before the 12th. The eclipse did not create the problem. The eclipse kicked up the dust that was under the rug. And what you are seeing now is the real floor of your life, without the disguise that fatigue, routine, and daily distraction normally place over it. An argument that explodes now was waiting to explode. A sadness that rises now was dammed up. A distancing that becomes obvious now was already forming. Interpreting this as a curse is giving the shadow a power it does not have. The shadow only illuminates. What you do with what was illuminated is your choice. And here once again is where the sleeping majority loses its way because they begin to fear the eclipse. They begin to protect themselves from something that came to heal, and they end up wasting exactly the clearest lens they will have all year. That is why Magia M28 Exercícios was designed for 28 days and not for a week, because revelation without integration becomes a wound. And the first pinned comment has everything you need to know to start today. If you haven't secured your access yet, this is the moment. The window does not wait. The fifth trap attacks the body. And it is here that many people ruin the post-eclipse period thinking they are celebrating. The period that opens now should be treated as a phase of deceleration, not excess. Heavy food in large quantities, alcohol, artificial stimuli, extreme training, long parties, prolonged workdays, all of this functions at this moment like a short circuit. The nervous system has just crossed a rare electromagnetic event. The emotional field is more permeable than usual, and the body needs space to process what the mind hasn't even begun to understand. Hydration, simple food, light movement and rest are not generic well-being tips. They are the physiological base so that what was accessed during the eclipse can descend, organize itself, and settle inside you. When the body is overloaded in the hours immediately following, it begins to produce symptoms: extreme fatigue, headache, anxiety, irritation, insomnia. And the person then attributes these symptoms to the eclipse, which is a wrong reading. It wasn't the eclipse. It was the excess added to the eclipse. It is like putting an engine under maximum pressure right after it has crossed an electrical storm. It will fail, but not because of the storm, because of your impatience in demanding performance from it before recovery. Treat your body over the next 48 hours like someone treating a convalescent, not as weakness, as respect. The sixth trap comes at night, and it is subtle because it seems like a natural extension of the experience. After waiting so long for the eclipse, there is an unconscious resistance to letting the day end. The person stays at the window looking at the sky, stays on their phone looking for photos and reports, keeps scrolling through comments, keeps hunting for new signs through the early hours, as if turning off meant losing something. And it is exactly the opposite. The dawn following an event like this is the moment when the field most needs to be sealed. Staying awake, exposed to the light of screens, with an accelerated mind looking for the next stimulus, is the most efficient way to dissolve what was built during the day. Create an environment of withdrawal. Dim the lights. Turn off notifications. Drink water. Make a symbolic gesture of closure, even if it is something simple like blowing out a candle, placing your hand on your heart, writing a single sentence in a notebook, or just saying quietly to yourself that the day has ended. Allow the mind to close the passage. Sleeping early after the eclipse is not weakness. It is not a lack of dedication. It is not wasting the energy of the day. It is exactly the opposite. It is sealing the passage so that it continues to work inside you while the body rests. A lot of important things in the coming days will arrive in dreams, in morning intuition, in ideas that appear at the first coffee. And none of that happens if you enter the night continuing the hunt for the spectacle. The seventh trap is the most painful because it attacks precisely those who have already understood the essentials. A truth about a relationship, a habit, a professional choice, an old version of yourself, or an old family dynamic may become painfully clear after the eclipse. And the most destructive reaction, and unfortunately the most common, is to transform this clarity into guilt. You start wondering how you hadn't seen it before, how you accepted it for so long, how you were so naive, how you wasted so many years, how you became that version of yourself. And each of those questions, if not interrupted, becomes a rope that ties you to the past, just when the portal is opening to the future. Pay attention to this, because it is a law that almost no one explains. The purpose of revelation is never judgment. The purpose is a different response. The shadow illuminated the truth so that you can act in another way from now on, not so that you condemn the person you were before you were able to see. That person did the best they could with the awareness they had. If they had the clarity you have now, they would have chosen differently. But they didn't, and that is why you are here. Guilt paralyzes you. Clarity moves you, and they are radically different things, although the mind tries to confuse the two. Forgive the old version, not because it deserves sentimental forgiveness, but because it needs to be released so that the new version can occupy the space. And here, I need to be absolutely direct with you, because the time for decision now is short, and what is at stake is great. If you have reached this point in the video, you are no longer among the curious. You are among those who have already understood that they crossed something real. Magia M28. Exercicius exists exactly for this version of you that is being born now, the one that needs to transform restlessness into language, shadow into clarity, signs into decisions, and awareness into practical direction. It is 28 days, an entire lunar cycle, starting today if you wish. The first pinned comment of this video has the access. Do not leave it for tomorrow, because tomorrow the intensity will already begin to dissolve, and the price of rebuilding the window alone later is much higher than crossing it now with the right structure. Act today. The eighth and final trap is the premature return to noise. In the hours following the eclipse, there is an enormous temptation to immediately return to the maximum volume of life. Screens on in every room, loud music, piled up commitments, open notifications, simultaneous conversations, as if nothing had happened, as if the 12th had been just a curious astronomical event and life should continue exactly the same. This attempt at accelerated normalization is the last saboteur and perhaps the most subtle, because it disguises itself as productivity, as resilience, as maturity. It is none of those things. It is fear of silence, because silence is where the revelation continues working, and continuing to receive revelation after a day like yesterday requires a courage that many people do not yet have. The eclipse did not end abruptly. It moved out of the shadow gradually, little by little, allowing the sky to return to light at its own pace. And this image is the final teaching I need to deliver to you today. Return slowly. Allow the volume of your life to rise gradually, at the same pace the sun returned. If you force an immediate return, you drown out the meaning. If you respect the gradual, the meaning begins to appear on its own, without effort, in the exact place it needs to appear. In the next 72 hours, consciously choose what enters your field. Less screens, less noise, less opinions from others, less consumption of random content, more silence, more walking, more breathing, more recording of what you feel. The true meaning of August 12 will not appear on the 12th. It will begin to appear when the external intensity diminishes and there is internal space to comprehend what remained. And what remained is always more than it seems. Before finishing, I wrote in the first pinned comment everything you need so as not to waste this window. If you have made it this far, comment only the word attraverser below. This comment is an energetic marking. It is your way of telling your own field that you recognize the passage, that you will not pretend nothing happened, and that you choose to be part of the conscious minority that uses these openings instead of letting them pass. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, understand that every video here is a coordinate within a larger map. This video was about what to avoid after the eclipse. The next ones will show what happens in the following weeks, what the subsequent windows are, and how every movement of the sky in the coming months connects with what you have just crossed. To miss this sequence is to be left with loose pieces of a map that only makes sense as a whole. What you heard today was just the preparation. The revelation of what all this means for your new life is in the video appearing on the screen now. Click on it. The first 60 seconds will reorganize the way you understand this passage and will show you exactly the next step within the map. The shadow has already fulfilled its role. Now it is your turn.